We have the person who is more responsible for the Los Angeles technology and startup scene than anyone else, and that's Bill Gross, the founder of Idealab.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here. It's fantastic to see the LA startup scene looking like this. It's something I could have only dreamed of when I first graduated from college and was doing my first startup after Caltech. But it's so great to see this. I've been starting companies for such a long time, and I've seen so much over the years, and I really have to say there's really never been a better time to be an entrepreneur in history. And what I wanted to share with you today was some of the best advice I've received over the last 40 years of starting companies. As you heard, I've been starting companies for a very long time, even since I was 12 years old. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I first discovered that you could buy candy at Save-On 3 for a quarter, 8 1/3 cents each, when it was selling for 10 cents. So I bought it at Save-On, and I sold it at the bus stop for 9 cents, undercutting the student store by a penny, making a whopping 2/3 cent margin on each candy bar. But I made $400 running this little business in junior high school, and I used it to buy some tools. I was really excited to learn woodworking and metalworking, and I bought a lathe and a drill press, started building prototypes of products, and that led to my next business in high school, which was solar devices. And the energy crisis had come in 1973, and I don't know how many of you remember this, but in 1973, in California, you had to buy gas rationed at only $5 on even odd-numbered days based on the last digit of your license plate. So there were long lines piling out of every gas station, and I was wondering if there was some way you could convert solar energy to useful energy to try and impact this energy crisis we had at that time. I was a little 12-year-old, 14-year-old entrepreneur, but I made these little Stirling engines, little parabolas to concentrate solar energy, and I was reading Popular Science magazine at the time, and I took out a small ad in the back of Popular Science and sold plans and kits for $4 each. And over the next few years in high school, I sold 10,000 of those plans, so I made $40,000 that actually paid my way through Caltech. And maybe even had an impact on me getting into Caltech because I put that on my application. So that might have had a big impact on my career just doing those little experiments because of the energy crisis in 1973. And my next business at Caltech, I fell in love with high-end audio, and I started building and designing loudspeakers, and Caltech helped me get a patent on this first loudspeaker design. I began selling them to the whole campus. I began selling the speakers at USC and to the whole Pasadena community. And I opened a stereo store called GNP, stood for Gross National Products, on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. And I manufactured the loudspeakers there and sold high-end audio equipment. And I sold that business the year the IBM PC came out, because right when I graduated in 1981, that was the year the IBM PC came out. And I ran down to my computer land in Pasadena, bought one of those IBM PCs for $5,000. It had floppy drive, 160K floppy drive, and 64K of RAM, and began learning how to program, and bought BASIC and DOS and Pascal. And Lotus 1-2-3 came out right after that. And I started making products that work with Lotus 1-2-3. One of them was called CPA Plus. One of them was called HAL and Lotus Magellan, because eventually Lotus acquired my company. In 1985, this was the first experience I had with a company I had started actually being acquired by a large company. And I went back and worked for Lotus in Cambridge. I was at Lotus in Cambridge for 6.5 years until I started my next business in 1991 when my son started kindergarten. And I started Knowledge Venture when the multimedia revolution was taking off, when CD-ROMs were starting to be embedded in almost every PC. I really felt there was a chance to make something that would really make kids fall in love with learning. And because it happened, it coincided with when my son started kindergarten, I was very nervous that maybe he wouldn't fall in love with learning. So I wanted to make products that would cause children to fall in love with the learning process, not just with learning facts. And this was very exciting times. We built this company up. We made a whole bunch of different products. We made Dinosaur Adventure and Undersea Adventure and 3D Body and Space Adventure. We worked with Buzz Aldrin on Space Adventure, and eventually sold this company after selling about 20 million copies of these products in 1995 for $90 million. And that's when I realized I love starting companies so much, but I didn't want to do them just in series. I wanted to do them in parallel. And that led me to start Idealab in 1996. It was a technology incubator designed specifically to allow us to start multiple things in parallel, and I could find separate teams that would run each company. And I wouldn't have to go run and build each company individually, because I had so many ideas in different areas that I wanted to start. And you'll hear a lesson that I'll give you in a moment about that I tried to reconcile the need for focus with my need to start lots of different things. So now looking back on all of this, Idealab has all the resources for shared company creation. And over the last 16 years, we've started more than 100 companies, as you've heard. And those 100 companies, probably each one of them has done more than 3 rounds of financing. So we've done more than 300 rounds of financing with different investors over the years. We've helped the companies raise more than $3.5 billion across all of them. And we've had 60 successes and 40 failures. So we're not perfect. We've learned a lot more from the failures than from the successes, but we've learned a lot of painful lessons from those, some of which I want to share with you today. Of the successes, we had 35 successful IPOs and acquisitions, and we have 25 current operating companies. But across all that period, I would say I've started companies in good times and bad, and I can definitely say that right now is the best time ever to start a company. And here are the reasons why I say that. Most of you in this room already feel this, that's why you're doing this, but just to reinforce it even further, if any of you are thinking about joining a startup, here's why it's so great. Startups are so completely understood today. When I was doing my first startups after graduating from college, it was such a hard sell to convince someone to come join a startup, to explain someone what a startup was about, to explain to investors why they should invest. Everything about doing a startup was so much harder back then. Attracting talent has never been easier because of that, and attracting capital has never been easier. There was never something like this today, where a startup could come up and present to a whole audience, both of other founders, other entrepreneurs, and investors, to be able to explain to even have practice to explain their story, let alone to actually raise capital and improve their business. So it's a really, really great market for attracting capital, and it's gone completely global. And then finally, reaching the global audience has never been easier. The companies that I started over the years, some of them had to fight and slog to get distribution. I remember companies where we had to fight to get retail space and fight to be an Egghead or CompUSA or Walmart. And now the fact that you can use smartphones all over the planet and internet access all over the planet and many billions of people connected to reach a global audience, it's just unbelievable how you can bypass all the barriers that normally block a small, fast-moving startup from beating the big, lumbering giant. Now a startup has the ability with the global reach to bypass all the normal intermediaries and go right to the end consumer, right to the end customer, whoever the customer might be. So that is a really, really powerful thing, and that's what makes doing a startup today so great, and it's just a fantastic opportunity for all of you in the audience. So what's the best advice I've ever received over all these years? Some of which, by the way, I didn't listen to, certainly at first, but eventually listened to. I'll tell you what that advice is. And maybe you can't ever hear advice and listen to it on the first time, that you have to skin your knee yourself before you can actually internalize the advice. But I'm going to tell it to you anyway. I think some of this advice is very important, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. And even if only one of you leaves the room today, taking one tiny tidbit of this and it helps your business, it will make me feel very gratified that some of the pain I had in learning these lessons could actually benefit you. So first one, test, test, test. So I learned this back in high school. I was doing my little mail order business, and I went to the library. There was no internet, so I couldn't go to the internet to get information, but I would go to the downtown library, take the RTD downtown to the public library, and read every single book on direct marketing there was. And in all the books on direct marketing, all they kept on saying over and over again was test, test, test. Take every proposition you have, every idea you have, and test it. And I used to send out, in the ads I ran in Popular Science magazine, these were little tiny $25 classified ads. I would run each ad each month and have one proposition, and I have the address be A Gross, Encino, California. And then next month I would do B Gross, Encino, California, and then C Gross, just so I could track which ad they were answering from, and I could see the different wording I used in ads. This was a very early form of CPA or CPC to try and figure out what was going to work with these ads. But all these articles, all these books were saying to keep on testing every variable. And I would test even the letters I would send back to people. I would test different color ink, different kinds of stamps, different size envelopes, different price for a catalog, different price for the plans. And it just ingrained in me testing every single variable. And later on, this came in very handy. When I started companies at Idealab, one classic story, some of you might have heard this, but some of you might have not. This company, Cars Direct, that we started in 1998, this was a company to sell cars online. And if you remember back to that time, people were even scared to put their credit cards online, even for Amazon, let alone putting a $1,000 deposit for a car. And I wanted to buy a car online. I didn't want to go into the dealer and haggle, but I didn't know if other people wanted to. And sort of drawing subconsciously on my testing mentality from back in my mail order days as a teenager, I wanted to make a website where we could just test this proposition. And I kept on working with the entrepreneur I was co-founding this with just to put up the simplest test. I didn't know the term concierge MVP. This is the term that Eric Ries uses in Lean Startup, which is basically a website that's running, but there's a concierge running around the background doing all the work behind the scenes. We didn't even build out the infrastructure for the website. When we put the website up, We launched it on a Thursday night, and the next morning when I came in, I said, what happened? And we turned out we'd sold 4 cars, and I said, hurry up and turn the site off. And the reason to hurry up and turn the site off was we were selling the cars for $1,000 over invoice, but we had to go buy them at the Honda Auto Mall in Monrovia at retail and deliver them to people. So, but we had learned in one night that 4 people had taken out their credit card, the actual sort of cashectomy moment where they take out their wallet, they type in their credit card. We weren't even running the credit card. We were just trying to see, will people do that? Then we bought the car, we showed up at their house with the car in a flatbed truck, we completed all the paperwork, and we sold them the car with regular loan documents. But we found out, do people really want to do it? And I recently read the book, Lean Startup, which I really, really recommend heartily for everybody here. It's this great book by Eric Ries. And he has come up with great terminology to try and apply to all the things that I sort of was instinctively doing back from this test mentality, but I didn't really have the verbiage for it, which is fantastic. Minimum viable product, which everybody talks about. And I would even like to take it further. I would urge you to take it further. I even call it MVT, not MVP. What's the minimum viable test you can do to get the answer you want to know to figure out how you go forward? To apply the scientific method to business, you should be doing a test. It might not even involve a product. You should try and figure out a way to do your test without even making a product. Sometimes making a product is even too much. So I really, really urge you to do that. And why I think this is so important is you are a small startup competing against a big incumbent in some dimension, someone with more money, someone bigger, someone somewhere. The way you can outrun them by doing smaller, cost-effective tests, that's the way you can crush them. That's the thing that you can bring to the game that they don't have in their arsenal. And that's why I think this is so important. So test is the single best piece of advice I ever got. I got it from a book back when I was a teenager, but very, very valuable. Next one, find the right partners. I didn't listen to this when I first heard this. When I was first raising outside money for my companies, I went off and had bidding wars between investors. And I pretty much tended to go with the person who bid the highest. And people kept telling me, you should really find the person who cares the most about your business and who you share the most vision with. And I would say, well, how am I really going to find that out? Well, you really should be interviewing your investor just as much as they're interviewing you. And I just thought, I don't really think I have the capability to do that. I don't think they'll put up with that. And I learned after the first few startups that being in business with a partner who completely supports you, who agrees with the direction you want to take the company, is worth many, many millions off of the valuation. It is so, so much better to be in business. Basically, you're getting married with the investor who comes into your company. Finding the person who really is symbiotic with what you want to do matters more than valuation. It was very painful for me to learn this. I didn't learn this till like my 3rd or 4th startup, and I was fortunate that I even had a chance to get to my 3rd or 4th startup to learn this. People told it to me and I didn't listen. Now I give this advice and I live by it myself. It's way, way more important to be in bed with the right partner more than the highest valuation, or even the fanciest brand name. Someone who really shares your vision is going to matter much more. Next piece of advice, don't listen to the press. This is very, very hard to do. My sub-bullet here is, you're never as good as they say you are on the upside, and you're never as bad as they say you are on the way down. And it just is always an overreaction. It's always an overshoot. And that's because the press has to sell newspapers. Has to sell themselves, has to sell page views, has to have link bait, has to do whatever. They have a goal which is not reporting the facts exactly as they are. And it is so easy to get caught up when you see something in a big headline somewhere, and when other people see something in a big headline somewhere, to take that as demoralizing or as amoralizing, getting you too hyped up about yourself. And I lived through the dot-com crash. That was a really, really tough period. I lived through the recent recession, very tough period. I lived through the 1991 recession. It was very, very hard to raise money back then with the Gulf War starting, and I had some new ideas. It was very, very difficult, and there was bad press and good press every which way. And I actually got this advice from Jack Welch from GE, who was talking to me in 2000 when the market began crashing. And just hearing it from him and his perspective and his long view at General Electric really made me reflect on it and gave us the courage and fortitude to live through some of the really, really tough times after the dot-com crash. There were people who wouldn't even invest in startups at all from like 2001 to 2004. It was really, really dry territory. And some of the press about us and others were very, very bad. And coming up with a way to look the other way through that, knowing that they have other objectives, very, very important thing to do. I got this advice quite late in life, but very valuable and something I would really urge to you. Again, both on the upside and the downside. You're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are. Next, acquire complementary skills. This took me till I was 35 to learn. People kept telling me this, and I just never did it. And then I finally had a company that was at the breaking point. Knowledge Venture had grown to 250 people, and it was beyond anything I had managed before. The company was very successful, but it was very, very challenging to manage all the differing silos that had developed in the company and all the differing views in the company. And what I needed to do was find people who complemented and balanced my strengths and learn how to have mutual trust and respect for people who weren't just like me. I had a tendency, and most people do in life, to go out and look for people just like themselves because you're attracted to people just like you are. So here's an example in more specifics of the other complementary skills that I urge you to get in your startup. And by the way, investors, when they look at the founding team of your company, either you and your co-founder or you and your founding team, in addition to looking how you get along, they're looking at how complementary the team is. So it actually helps your valuation a lot too. But forget your valuation. It just helps your success. And this was something I learned much later in life, and I wish they had a class like this in college. This would have been incredible. But let me give you some more specifics. There are, of course, many ways to evaluate personality, but these 4 main personality types in a startup: the entrepreneur, I'll call E, the producer, or P, the administrator, or A, and the integrator, or I. So the entrepreneur skill, most of you in this room know this. The entrepreneur is the visionary, the person who looks out over the horizon, the person who sees the future, the person who sees what they want to make, who's inventing new things. That skill is essential for a startup. If that skill is chased out of the startup will eventually wither away and die. It might survive for a while. In fact, what often gets chased out of big companies is this entrepreneurial spirit. A company needs to have this at all stages, but a company cannot be founded without this. So this is almost always plentiful at the beginning of a startup. The E is very easy to find. The E is probably you here in the room or some other person in your company who is the person who is inventing what you're doing. The next skill, the P skill, though, is also crucial. If you have a great idea, but you can't execute, the producer, the person who can actually make the product or sell it to a customer, or actually make things happen, the company will wither away and die. Just having ideas isn't enough. You have to actually do something. Very often, the founding entrepreneur also has a lot of P skills. Not like you're just one of these and nothing else. So very often, an entrepreneurial skill goes hand in hand with some P skill, otherwise you can't get anything done. But if not, the entrepreneur better find that P person, whether that's a COO, or just a VP of engineering, or something. Could be a VP of sales. But it's got to be some skill that can actually go out, get that product done, and get that thing sold. Otherwise, the company won't succeed. The company can go quite far on E and P, and that's what we had a lot of at Knowledge Venture. But then it needs to have some A, because eventually, if it doesn't have some administration, A might often be referred to as bureaucracy, but A applied to the right level is not bureaucracy, it's necessary. So the administrator skill is the person who keeps the wheels on the train, who keeps everything running smoothly, who puts some processes and procedures in place. Not ones that take the company down. If any one of these are in too extreme, it will take the company down. But if it's in harmony with the others, it'll get the company to a point of prime or succeeding really well. And then finally, you need some, so at our company, Knowledge Venture, we had a lot of E, that was me. We had a bunch of producers. Literally, they were called producers. They were people who made our products, and we had a great VP of sales, and we had a CFO who could close the books and all that. And we gradually started bringing in some A, bringing in some process and so on. But we needed some I, and that's what we were missing at the company. I didn't even know what I was when the company was having challenges. And what I is the integration skill to help those other 3 people or those 3 other styles get along. Because very often the E, the P, and the A, they hate each other's guts. And it's because they come from things from a completely different viewpoint. And let me just go show you this chart. So this is the chart of the life cycle of a company. This is from a great business consultant named Ichak Adizes, who has a book called Corporate Life Cycles. But the company starts out, and it starts going up and to the right with the E. The E's got the idea and gets going. But the E, if he never brings any P in, just fizzles out and dies, because the E is just sitting around talking and not doing anything. If the E brings some P in and actually starts doing something, the company could advance to a later stage. And again, start getting some revenue, start having some success. But eventually, if no processes are in place, customers' orders will not be fulfilled on time, there'll be no customer service, money won't get collected, things will start falling through the cracks, and the company will eventually fail too. So it brings in some A. And then the company can survive a little bit longer, grow bigger. But eventually, if there's not harmony, if you don't bring in that I to have everything working smoothly, the I is the person who looks around and tries to get people to work together and sees when there's an argument and brings people together. And I'll give you one example, not even of an argument, but just of these 4 styles. And I'm harping on this because I think this is so valuable to a company, and I wish I had learned this sooner. Imagine you have 4 of these personality styles sitting in a room. We're sitting in this room right here. And we're looking out the window, and there's a scratch on the window. The P will look at that scratch and say, I see that scratch on the window. We should go get that taken care of right away. The A will look at that and say, there's a scratch on the window. We should make a form. And when someone sees something wrong, they'll fill it out. They'll put it down. We'll look at it in order, and we'll go through and take care of all of them. The E will look at the window and say, in that parking lot over there, we could build a new building, and we could... and the I will look at that and say, I wonder what those 3 people are thinking. So the I doesn't even see the scratch, is just looking at other people and caring about how they're thinking and trying to get those 3 people with their widely different worldviews to all work together to have success. So it's not easy to get all these skills in your company. It's not easy to be at Prime, but it is extremely valuable, and it's something that you need to try and do to get other complementary skills to yourself and not think that your point of view is the only one that matters. And every company that we've had, if I look back at all of our companies and look for the single strongest predictive factor of success, it was a strong complementary team at the top. That is better than the idea. It's better than how much money they raised. It's better than everything. And that's why I've harped on this so much, and it's so important. And then finally, focus, focus, focus. This is very, very hard for me because I have ideas all over the map. I didn't learn this till much later in life. I read a book called Focus by, I think it's Trout and Reese. Really, really great book on companies focusing their product line for marketing reason. Because they were saying that not only is focus important to help you be successful, because you're a small startup, you can only do one thing at a time. And Mark Suster recently wrote a really brilliant blog post on your management bandwidth is your most scarce resource. So focusing your company to take best advantage of the limited management bandwidth that you have, not even your capital. Your management bandwidth is even more scarce than the capital you have. So focusing is very important for that. But I learned, I'll tell you this particular story at Knowledge Adventure where this changed the company for us. We were making products all over the map. Any idea we have that we thought was a good idea, we'd have a producer, we'd hire him, we'd give them some capital, they start making a product, and we put it on the market, put it on the shelves, and sell as much as we could. And we were finding that we had a lot of product on the shelves, and one Christmas we needed to make our numbers. We were trying to hit, I think it was an $18 million revenue target in December, because a lot of this business happened at Christmas time. We were not going to hit our number that year. We just raised venture capital. We wanted to hit our number really badly. And what we did is we took everybody in the company at that time. There were 65 people. My brother was in the company with me, and he organized this thing called Weekend Warriors. And every single person in the company got assigned a store in the greater LA area. So I got the CompUSA out in City of Industry. Someone else got Fry's in Woodland Hills. Someone else got Egghead on Sepulveda. Someone got something everywhere. And then on Saturday and Sunday, they go in the store. They bring a box of donuts to bribe their way in at 10 o'clock, give it to the salespeople, stand on the end of the aisle, and demo our products all day long. We didn't have permission to do it, but we just went in there. Now, we would boost their sales quite a bit, so they were pretty happy because we were a free salesperson for them. We would boost their numbers, and then corporate would see the numbers boosting in California like crazy, and then they would order more for the whole country, so that was very helpful to us. But every Monday after we would do this, Larry would organize this debriefing of everything we learned all weekend long in all the stores on this Weekend Warrior program. We did this for 4 weeks in a row, and it really we did make our numbers, and it was a huge thing, but a way huger thing happened. And that is related to the focus thing I'm telling you. When we were talking about our observations in the store, and this would be like a typical aisle on a CompUSA, we would see people walking down the aisle, picking up products, looking at them, turning them over, putting them back down. Picking up products, looking at the back, putting them over, opening the thing, putting it back down. And we see people pick up our products, put them back down. And we finally figured out that what happens is people are trying to make this whole $39.95 purchase decision from 6 square inches of cardboard on the back of a box without ever trialing the product. And they couldn't tell if it was for their child. And the idea, and we were saying on the box, we were bragging about how it was for everyone. I think one of our products even said, for ages 8 to 108, we were bragging because we wanted to be as broad as possible. And we learned that was maybe a negative because people couldn't figure out, well, is this for my kid or not? So we had this idea, it was a very controversial idea in the company, to do something called Jumpstart Kindergarten. What about if we make a product for only 1 grade? It'll be just for 5-year-olds. It'll be the narrowest product you could possibly make. Well, our sales guy said, there's no way I'm going to do that. There's no way I can get SoftCell, Maricel, all the distributors to take a product from us, which is for such a narrow target. They're just not going to give it shelf space. I can't do it. And we were arguing, well, I think people will really understand the product is for them. We had a lot of arguments for about 6 months, and finally we just decided, we're just going to spend 200 grand. We're going to make this product. We're going to put it out there. We're going to see what happens. Now, 200 grand was a pretty risky experiment for us, but we decided we had to do it because we felt that this would really resonate with customers because the problem they were having was they can't figure out if this is for them. We made this one product. We sold 5 million copies. It was incredible how this took off. We ended up making a whole line of products, Jumpstart Kindergarten, Jumpstart First Grade. And what we found was making a narrower focused product increased sales, not decreased. We thought the narrow focus was going to be worse. Well, it turns out not only do we now focus as a company, because now we started getting skills in the company to make a series of products. We started getting lots of economy of scale in the company in the production side. But on the marketing side, we were so much more clearer. And again, that's one thing that a small company has as an possible advantage against a big company, is you can have a laser-like target on your customer, on the customer need, that a big company might not have. Now, often big companies have done that. But if you can do that, if you can outrun a big company with focus, it's just a great, great opportunity. So I hope some of those things will be helpful to you. You might not listen to them right off the bat. Maybe you'll skin your knee and listen to them the second time around. I'm happy to answer other questions on them for you or give you any other advice you can. I'm so proud of what's happening here in Los Angeles. I'm so grateful for the chance that I had here. I'm so honored to be able to talk to you today. Feel free to contact me. You can reach me at contact@idealab.com or on Chime In, which is our social network. My handle is Bill, or on Twitter, I'm Bill_Gross. And I'll be around for the rest of the day, so I'm happy to talk to you further. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience.